forgot my pen. What did you have to type in?
Her name's
Hi.
hello.
Oops.
Hello.
Hi there.
Hi, Nancy.
How was cat sitting?
It was so much fun. It's just incredible because he is the most cooperative little boy, and my job was to, as a senior kitty, to just make sure he remembers to eat.
Sounds like a good job. Change of
Yeah.
scenery and
You know, and I don't know about anybody else, but I love the idea that it was a mini getaway for me. My daughter was very generous and booked me for a couple of really great events. I saw Josh Groban
oh,
and Ed Sheeran.
oh,
That's excellent.
Yeah, so
Nice.
it was a lot of fun, and I can only say that I'm glad I'm not of their age, their generation, because it's exhausting having so much fun. Yeah, yeah. And now this afternoon, oh, I don't know if I can flip this. And this afternoon, I went over to the SPCA.
uh-oh.
Let's see if I can show you. I don't know that I can flip this. Let's see. Can you flip this? No, you can't. Okay, so I will just go show you very quickly. Because I hope I can do this. I don't know. Can you see? No, I can't see. I'm not very good at this.
Oh,
here we go.
oh my
Okay.
gosh, Nancy, that looks like my babies.
I do not see
Oh my gosh, it looks like my Francis.
the screen.
And here are the
Oh,
other
there's
three.
another. Oh,
I
how
see
many
ears.
are there?
Oh
I
my
have four.
goodness, how many did you have? Oh, wow.
I have four little ones.
Are
that
you fostering or are these yours?
no fostering,
Oh,
Oh, they're
unless of course, as
adorable.
my son has very clearly let his children know. Let's just find out if Mana knows what the word fostering means.
Oh, they're beautiful.
Yeah. So I went from taking care of one senior to four little ones who are, I don't know,
Oh,
maybe like 3 to 4 weeks old.
oh.
Yeah. Yeah. So my job is my favorite job in the whole world, which is to just constantly feed somebody. Yeah.
Oh, they're beautiful.
And they've been running around since
Mhm.
you know, like 5:30. So
Mm.
watching and I'm like, okay, they're ready for nap time.
Oh, no, not really.
Yeah, well, the one that the black one that you saw, there's three that are white and marked.
Yeah.
The black cat. And the black cat only came out about 10 minutes ago. He's a scaredy
Oh.
cat.
Oh.
Yeah.
They're siblings, Nancy?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Boys,
So-
girls, a mix.
She said 3 boys and 1 girl. So one of the
Mhm.
white ones is a boy, but
Mm.
I have to go figure out which one.
Oh, they're beautiful.
But anyway, so yes, I went from the insanity of Nashville to your joy of doing this. And I, you know, yeah, I needed this.
Yeah, that's a great thing. Good for
Aw.
you.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Yeah.
a wonderful thing.
It's beautiful. And you never know, right? Maybe.
You know what? I said it before and it breaks my heart, but it's like if I want to go back and forth to Nashville and, you know,
That's
Yeah.
the thing.
this is
Nancy.
going to be the
Yeah.
life. I
Yeah.
don't really feel comfortable saying, yes, I'm going to get another kitty and then always
Yeah.
have to worry about how long am I going to be gone and, you know,
Yeah.
how them.
Yeah.
So
Go,
This-
right,
this is the
Yeah.
best.
yeah.
One of our parishioners just adopted a 14-year-old.
Oh, how wonderful. That's
Yeah.
very generous.
Yeah. Who the owner had died and I think was in the SPCA for three days and then she went and got him.
Oh, do you know the kitty's name?
Rusty?
I think I did see him.
Like an
Yes.
old, yeah. He's finally coming around, so yeah, it's a great thing.
Yeah, the older ones are pretty much traumatized, so it's nice if they
Mhm.
try to get them into the big gazebo so that
Yeah.
they're not stuck in a cage because they're not used to being in a small.
Right. guess he's doing well. So
Oh, that's wonderful.
yeah, it's good for both of them.
Yeah.
So welcome everyone tonight. This is our last scheduled class until September. And so you get a break for the summer from Genesis. I'm hoping tonight that we can get through 28. That's the hope. And then we'll pick up with with Jacob's narrative in the in the fall, the spring, whatever. So we'll open with prayer, and we'll just see if you have any questions or comments about last week, or if you have any questions. I'm sure you read 28 at some point, and we'll talk about that. There's a lot happening in this chapter, but there's some really interesting stuff going on. So we'll open with prayer, and then we'll get started. The Lord be with you.
So with you.
Spirit.
Let us pray. Gracious and loving God, we thank you for bringing us to this night, this cool night, and a relief from the heat wave. We thank you also for the gift of rain that is desperately needed. And we pray for all those who are asking that same prayer tonight. We ask, oh Lord, that you be present with us and to guide us and to open our eyes and our ears and our hearts to your wisdom and your love, so that we can be vessels and instruments of your grace to a world that's terribly broken. All this we ask in the name of your Son, our Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
So questions or comments about 27 before we move on to 28?
Excuse me for one moment. I'm going to go grab my earbuds. I'll be right back.
I thought you were going to say grab a cat. So, I mean, the one thing that we just kind of hit on last week was the ending of 27, right? Because it kind of has this really strange ending, this 46, where Rebecca says to Isaac, I'm just weary of my life because of these Hittite women, right? If Jacob marries one of them, what good will my life be to me? Like, that's the end of my life if Jacob does this to me. And it kind of comes out of left field, right? And I just wanted to kind of clear up what the meaning of that is, right? So scholars believe that was added at a later period, probably at the end of the exile, the beginning of the end of the exile, somewhere towards the end of the exile, right? And the reason being that it was really important for Israel to make sure that as they, went back to being a nation again, of rebuilding and restarting, was really important that they kept the purity of the faith, because they had seen that, what had happened when they didn't, right? They had gotten mixed up, remember from your prophets studies, right? They had gotten mixed up with all of the wrong things, and really were no longer very faithful to God and God's word. And the prophets, heavens knows, tried to bring them back. There was really no getting them back. And so they suffered the consequences of their idolatry and their, carousing with other nations and adopting things that totally went against Torah and God. And so it was really important for them, as they came out of exile, especially the priestly caste, who, this small few sentences is attributed to. It was really important for them to make sure that, they kept the purity of Israel as they came out of exile. Now, a lot of people today have weaponized this passage to say this is against, interracial marriage. It is not, right? This is not a racial comment. This is simply the fact that, you just don't marry outside of Judaism, right? It has nothing to do with interracial marriage. And there are times that we see in the Old Testament, excuse me, in the New Testament, in Paul's writing, where he disagrees with this. In First Corinthians, he certainly talks about, harmony is more important than purity, but then things switch in Second Corinthians, and he agrees purity is better than harmony, right? Stay to yourselves. So, and that's simply what this is saying, this last paragraph. Israel needs not to be influenced anymore by cultures that just don't honor what they honor and what God has taught them. because it gets you in trouble. It got Solomon in huge trouble. It gets Israel in trouble. It gets Judah in trouble. And so it's just a comment on, when there's tension between culture and God, it's important that you stick with your faith. So that wraps up 27. Any questions about that? And it's also a great lead in, right? So it's also a great lead in for 28, where Jacob's actually sent to Laban's family to find a wife. And he kind of goes there, he's kind of sent there with two motivations, right? The first is that, well, Esau is out for blood, right? He's ready, he's gonna kill him. And Rebecca makes this statement, like, I can't lose both of them. And that again refers to the blood revenge, right? That anybody who takes a life has to forfeit their lives, right? That's the price. And so if Esau would have killed Jacob, then Esau's life would have been demanded for it. And so, of course, Rebecca is trying to protect kind of both of her sons, but especially Jacob, who's her prize, right? It's her precious son. And but it also is a lead-in, right? Because it's important that Jacob honors the Abraham's command to marry within the family, right? Esau doesn't. And we know at the end of one chapter, it causes both Isaac and Rebecca tremendous stress. And now there's this, this two reasons why Jacob has to leave. But it's more important now than ever that Jacob marries within the family, because now he is the heir apparent. Right? He's not the heir apparent, he's the rightful heir now. And so this kind of is a great lead-in to chapter 28, where he's actually going to leave to go to Laban and find a wife, right? He's going to protect his safety. He's going to find a wife. And things kind of change here, right? So we know in the last chapter, when there's this duping of Isaac, that Jacob gets the blessing out of deception. Isaac doesn't really give him the Abrahamic blessing, right? It is not the blessing that God gives to Abraham. It's different, right? The blessing that Isaac gives to Jacob, thinking it's Esau, is really a blessing of prosperity, of material things, right? Power, dominion, supremacy in the family. It's not this blessing that God gives Abraham, of land and progeny and being a blessing to nations. It's different. But now that we assume Isaac has seen the error of his ways in trying to force his will by choosing his favorite son for the blessing over God's will, right? It is a wake-up call for Isaac. And Isaac is now ready to give Jacob the rightful blessing. And this is how 28 opens, right? Isaac now gives him, first he commands him to go and to find a spouse from Laban's family, Rebecca's brother, and then gives him the Abrahamic blessing in 3, right? And here, he uses all that right language: make you fruitful and numerous, that you may become a company of peoples. And that's a really kind of different language that we've heard all along. But the original Hebrew word that's used for this infers a religious gathering. And so already we're being told that Israel is going to have a very spiritual, religious role to play. This isn't just a nation, right? But it's a nation that has a religious purpose. And here we get the blessing of the offspring, right? The possession of the land. With that reiteration that God gave this to Abraham. Right, so this is the actual blessing. This is the actual birthright that that Esau is said to have despised. This very spiritual blessing. And now it's official, right? Jacob is now officially the heir to this blessing and promise. he is now officially, even though he goes away for 20 years, he's now officially, has the official role of the head of the family. And he's sent away, right? He's sent away. And it's a very interesting statement in 5, right? When Isaac sends him to Laban. It says, Laban, the brother of Rebekah, Jacob's and Esau's mother. So this is very common in Oriental writing, right? When something's important, there's a reiteration of that. And that's especially true when it comes to families, right? This is just reinforcing the family. But interestingly enough, do you see what happens at the end of this sentence?
They flip the order.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So it's the recognition that Jacob is now the heir. So the order is flipped, right? It's no longer by age, it's by birthright. Questions, comments? And again, remember, it's important that he marries within the family, right? That was Abraham's command. And the fact that Esau didn't would have made Esau totally unable to even have inherited that birthright. His marriage outside of the clan would have excluded him from that. And the fact that he has children with women who are outside the clan would have made them also illegitimate heirs. They would not have also qualified. So it's really important that Jacob finds a wife within the clan. And then it kind of changes, right? So the focus goes back to Esau in 6. And now this is kind of like Esau has a pre-come to Jesus moment, right? He sees that Isaac had blessed Jacob, yikes, right? And had sent him away to take a wife there. And, now he's not necessarily having a change of heart, but he thinks, yeah, maybe this did just displease my family. So he goes to Ishmael's tribe and he gets himself another wife.
And that's his cousin, right? That wife, Mahalath?
Yeah, so Ishmael is his father's brother. Yeah, so it would have been his cousin. Uh-huh. But what's wrong with that? I mean, he thinks that this is a really good thing, right? He thinks, yeah, I'm going to get a wife within the clan also, but what's wrong with that reasoning?
Well, first, he has a whole bunch of wives, doesn't he?
He does. He has a few more wives. Uh-huh.
I thought this was just him sucking up to Isaac.
I
Yeah,
actually thought it was trying to cancel out the Canaanite women. Like
Oh, no.
I'll take
Like,
this
get
one
rid-
and it'll make it all better. I don't know.
Yeah, so he does think he's going to make it all better, right? He's not going to get rid of those Canaanite women. He's going to keep them, right? We know when he reunites with Jacob, he's got a huge clan, right? He's done well. But yeah, it is to appease Isaac, right? That he thinks, well, I'll marry within the clan also. But he goes to Ishmael's family. He marries Ishmael's daughter. What is wrong with that?
Well,
Ishmael was outside the promise.
Yeah, Ishmael is outside the promise, right? He doesn't go to the right clan, right? Ishmael is not one of the covenant. He's outside the covenant. And so yet again, and he doesn't do it for spiritual reasons, right? He does it because he thinks, well, I displeased them. I'll try to do this. He's still, right? He's still looking for superficial gain. He's not looking for, to anything godly here. It has absolutely nothing to do with Yahweh. It is still his misunderstanding of the covenant. Questions, comments?
what's the lesson one is supposed to take from that? I mean, it's interesting little history, but why did the writers feel it important to include this?
The fact that, he just doesn't learn, right? And it reinforces why Jacob, despite his being very dubious and his being very scheming, right, was really the right one, and why God had chosen him for the blessing. Like Esau would never have been able to carry this blessing through, right? He's too superficial. He never gets it. He's just not this spiritual person. And so if, if culture had its way, right? If society had its way, then Esau would have, just by the fact that he came out a few seconds before Jacob, would have inherited this blessing and would have never been able to carry it through. It reinforces Jacob was the right choice. Even though pretty much at this point they're all jerks, right? The whole family is a bunch of jerks right now.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean,
Mhm.
except that Jacob cheated to get all
Mhm.
this, and you're saying, well, yeah, but it's all for the best anyway. Never mind, because Esau wouldn't have been the right candidate anyway.
Well, remember, John, right? The point of this narrative, it is not written with the same purpose as the Abraham narrative, right? The purpose of this Jacob narrative is to show that God is able to work his promise and plan despite us. And really, there are no morals in this story. It is not a story to teach ethics or morals. It's a story to show the supremacy of God and the power of God, right? And that God is able to work despite us. Now, when Jacob originally, gets the birthright, right? I mean, that is not trickery at all. Esau flat out sells it. And he sells it for very carnal reasons, right? So the birthright, which would have given Jacob the double inheritance, as well as the spiritual, the authority over the family once Isaac had passed. I mean, yeah, totally Esau's bad, right? Esau voluntarily does it. It shows that Esau only lives in the moment. He doesn't care about all this stuff. All this spiritual stuff means absolutely nothing to him. When they compare Esau and Jacob, remember, the narrator tells us Jacob, was quiet. He lived in tents, right? Meaning that he cared about family things, meaning that he cared about spiritual things as opposed to Esau, who was out hunting and who was just, he was hungry. And so he chose to satisfy his own needs, that immediate gratification over the over the plans of God. He didn't care about any of these things. And even when we think that, he was taking over the spiritual side of for the family when Isaac kind of starts to decline, right? He still doesn't care, right? His garments are in Rebecca's tent because he's got foreign wives and he just doesn't care. And so, yeah, he sells the birthright. When we get to the story of the blessing, does Jacob steal it? Yeah, he does. But remember that Isaac is acting against God's will at that point. Isaac totally had to have known about the oracle of destiny, right? And Isaac is totally working again from his own self-interest when he tries to force the blessing be bestowed on Esau. And which is really, even though Rebecca is the one that schemes this, right? She's actually the one working in accordance to God's will. And so again, this is a family that all four of them are very dysfunctional.
Mhm.
And they're pretty much all, acting ridiculously. But again, the purpose of this narrative is to show that God can overcome anything we throw out there. Does that make more sense, John?
Sure.
What
Look,
I
it
find
doesn't.
so
Mhm.
so surprising is, based on everything that we have talked about, the papa is in control. And
In what means?
there,
In what way? In what way,
he's the
Nancy?
head of the family. He's the head of the family religiously as well as
Mhm.
um, just on a normal daily basis.
Hmm.
And here, this is just all being run past him, and it's okay. It's a big nod.
Yeah, I mean, again, because he thinks he knows better than God.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Terribly disappointing.
In what way?
Well, because they're supposedly such devout Jews,
Well, they're not
but
Jews yet.
Not Jews
oh,
yet, right?
okay, they're
They're
not
not
Jews
Jews
yet.
yet. They're just they're people of the covenant.
Okay, but that's okay. We can still go and take things into our own hands.
Yeah, but don't we, I mean, but that's a very human, right? That's very
Yes,
human. Yeah.
yes,
And the same with us, right? Gosh, we can go to church every week and we can, do rosaries and we can pray and we can whatever, but there's still that very human side of us. So in a way, the story is very encouraging. In a way, the story is encouraging because it says that, God, if God makes a promise, God is going to keep it, right? And we can do all kinds of things, as we're going to see Jacob's going to do in this next chapter, but it doesn't alienate God. God gives Jacob this amazing promise that is like beyond any promise that patriarchs get, right? He gives Jacob an unconditional promise of presence, despite the fact that this guy is still a trickster, right? Despite the fact, and I don't know if you catch this, but we will certainly talk about this, despite the fact that he is bargaining with God. He is the only patriarch who bargains with God. He's the only person in the Hebrew Bible, right? That and there's vows made to God, but never based on a promise by God. He does it. He is bold and he is edgy. And sometimes he doesn't seem like a person to be admired. But again, you know, it goes back to what Paul says, in my weakness I'm made strong. And this is an early example about this. This very really morally weak person becomes the pillar of Israel. Not thanks to him, and not thanks to his mother, not thanks to his brother and his father, but thanks be to God. That is the real moral of this story. Questions, comments? So 10 starts, this very famous dream that Jacob has at Bethel, right? You've probably heard of this even before you read this chapter. And chapter 10, and you're not going to see this reflected in any of the translations that we have, right? Because the Hebrew doesn't translate, the English doesn't translate the Hebrew as it's really written. And that's a shame because there is a literary technique in Hebrew that's called the consecutive vav. And vav is the sixth letter of the Hebrew alphabet. And scholars will spell it W-A-W, but sloppy English will spell it V-A-V. And it is a literary technique that is meant to build tension in a story, right? And sometimes, the best way that we can translate it would be and then, right? It is a literary device that moves the narrative head quickly. And it creates tension, and it creates anxiousness, and it draws the reader, sucks us into this very, very active scene, right? So if we had seen this really translated the way it was originally written, right, it would have been, and he came out, and he went, and he encountered, and he spent the night, and he took, and he placed, and he lay down, and he dreamt, right? There's 8 of them, right? And what this is meant to do in this narrative is to bring the reader into this very urgent and anxious state of Jacob, right? Like Jacob doesn't just leave calmly, right? He's a fugitive. And this journey for him, which was, remember, like probably 500 to 900 miles, depending on what route he took, this had to be terrifying, right? He's got to be frantic. He's got to be exhausted, right? He's on the lam, right? He's on the run from a brother that's out to kill him. And by this consecutive vav, right, the narrator is drawing us into his desperation, right? He's doing all these things. He's frantic, right? He's on the run. He's also trying to control the future, right? He thinks if he can do all this stuff, he can escape what's just happened, right? There is no reliance on God here. It is just Jacob lashing out until we get to that last statement. And he dreamt. And at that point, right, the story's focus shifts. It shifts from being a very earthly, just desperate man trying to control his future to a very divine spectacle. Right? It's almost a breath in this passage. Jacob no longer has the control, right? He becomes passive at the point where he starts to dream. And God now has the control. Does that make sense? Questions, comments about that? And he encounters, right? There's an encounter with God. Before he does that, right? This is very telling. He takes one of the stones and he places it under his head, right, as a pillow. You see that in the end of 11, right? It shows that he's a person with nothing, right? He's using a pillow. He's using a stone as a pillow, right? There are many commentators who will say, well, I mean, the main reason is that, you know, it shows he has no place to rest his head. He has no shelter. He has no bedding. He has nothing. But there are commentators who will say, you know, the way the original text read is that he placed stones around his head as a protection against wild animals, right? So that if he was sleeping, the wild animals wouldn't come, you know, and attack his head, his face. And it's to show how vulnerable he is. Right? He's extremely vulnerable at this point. And he goes to sleep, right? This is all he has. He's vulnerable, he's out, he's got a pillow, he's got a stone for a pillow. And let me see, I've lost my paragraph here. And he goes into this dream state, right? He becomes passive, and God steps into the scene. The word for encounter here, right, is paga. It's a Hebrew word that has a couple of meanings, right? There's a spiritual meaning of intense prayer. There's also like a theological truth to this, right? It's like this encounter between God and Jacob. And it happens at a place that Jacob never expects, right? It means collision. Jacob doesn't go to this place on his own. He's not like he doesn't have a sense of direction, right? He's just running. And he gets to this place, but when he gets to this place, there's this intense spiritual reality where he collides with God at this place, totally unexpected. And it happens at a really vulnerable moment for him. And he has this dream, right? 12, and he dreams that there was a ladder. The actual Hebrew word is more like a ramp, more than like a ladder as we would think of. And it's set up on the earth, and the top of it is reaching to the heaven. And God's angels were ascending and descending on it. What does that mean to you?
That we have a connection with God, heaven, you know, that there's a direct connection between human and God.
Yeah, absolutely, Barbara.
It's very visual.
It is very visual. Yeah, it is, Lydia. Yeah. And it is very, like, you can see that in your mind, right? And yeah, at this point of vulnerability and desperation, Jacob encounters God, right? God is present in this very, very tense moment in life where it would seem like God shouldn't be present, right? But Jacob experiences God. There's an access to God. And that the fact that it's vertical, right, is saying that, there is a portal that you can experience God on earth. God is not this remote God. He is able to be experienced on earth. You have access to God. Questions, comments?
Not only just access, but two-way.
Two-way access, Barbara.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
a two-way communication.
Yeah. Yeah, that God is present, right? This is presence with God that can be experienced for real on earth, right? Questions, comments about that? Right, the top reaches to heaven, and of course the bottom is at earth, right? And the Lord stood beside him and decides in this moment of complete desperation, right? And makes this declaration: I am the Lord, the God of Abraham, your father, and the God of Isaac. And just reiterates the promise, right? I'm going to give this to your offspring, right? And this is a crazy promise, right? Isaac, like, Abraham was married when this promise is given. Like, Jacob's not even married, and God is talking about offspring, right? And your offspring will be like dust to the earth, and by that it means that they'll spread, right? And you shall spread abroad to the west and to the east and to the north and to the south. Remember when God gave this promise to Abraham, and he said, walk this way into all the corners of the earth. And again, he reiterates that all the families of the earth will be blessed in you and your offspring. Like, you're not even married. And then God expands this promise to Jacob, right? Know that I am with you and will keep you wherever you go. And I will bring you back to this land, for I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you. It's huge that God promises this abiding presence to this man who has been less than honest.
Hmm.
I mean, that's breathtaking. That's breathtaking. Because really, up until this point, we're kind of led to believe that there's some kind of spiritual element to Jacob. But there's doesn't seem to be like this personal relationship with God and Jacob. It's not like Jacob knows God, right? We certainly know that when he dupes his father, he says, and Isaac says, how did you get this hunting done so quickly? Are you my son? And Jacob says, yeah, I vow by your God. Right? He doesn't say my God. He doesn't say our God, right? He says your God, right? So while Jacob seems like he has it in him to be very spiritual, he doesn't have this personal relationship with God at this point. And yet God gives him this enormous promise of unconditional presence. It's huge, especially in this moment, right? That God reaches out and gives him this promise.
So why isn't that effectively the promise God gave to Abraham?
That he would be with him, yes. But this is expanded in this promise, right? In that Abraham, remember, John, is walking along with God at that point, despite the fact that Abraham falls, right? But this is just to a really dubious person. It's a very unconditional promise. It's unconditional to Abraham too, but there was obedience with Abraham.
So why do you
There's-
think that is?
What's that, Lydia?
Why do you think that it is? What are you supposed to understand from the unconditionality of it? That it's the promise was made, and the to a person that is not necessarily behaving in the
Mhm.
ways that the promise is not a reward for behavior or whatever.
No, it's not.
It's unconditional. And why?
Why would you say?
I'm asking you.
What would
You
everybody?
said-
Yeah. What? So does anybody have any feelings with that?
Well,
Hmm.
I
Well,
mean,
let somebody else answer.
No,
somebody
we
else-
love John answering. Yeah, go
Wait,
ahead, John.
you can tell me later.
Mhm.
Does anybody else have a
Yeah.
comment?
The only thing I can think of is it was promised to Abraham,
Hmm.
and this is just proving that I promised him, and I'm gonna continue that promise. It doesn't matter whether you're worthy at this point of that promise. It's a promise I made.
Yeah, the faithfulness of God, right? That is part of the reason, right?
No, you can talk.
Now you can talk, John.
can say to it. I mean, the concept of the I mean, that's, of course, I thought inherent in what we learned from the New Testament, the unconditional, like unconditional grace. It's not,
Grace, yeah.
it's
Mhm.
not earned.
Mm-hmm.
It's there.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly right. Right? It's grace. Why is God unconditional with all of us? We're pretty dubious too. We can scheme. As good as this one. It's just a matter of grace, Lydia. And again, remember,
Animal skins on myself to
what's that?
I've never
fix somebody out.
never put animal skins on my face to disguise myself.
Oh,
We're grateful for that.
yeah. Oh my God, the cat is so cute.
She crawled up.
But yeah, I mean, again, remember this story is more of a despite us story than it is, to show God's grace and sovereignty and unconditionality. I mean, there's none of us that deserve this, right? There's a Jacob in all of us. And yet, God still promises that presence. God still gives us that presence for no other reason, but because God is God, a God of grace. Does that help, Lydia?
No.
What would
Okay.
you like to? What have you?
It's a bigger discussion. No, that's okay.
Well, what have you like to see God do in this case?
Well, no, I don't want to have my
No,
Issue.
that's important.
people's time. No, it's different. There's some other things that I don't understand either. I don't want to bring that into this discussion.
Does anybody else think that God should have said, "Hey, forget it"?
Well,
Go ahead.
it's like if they're supposed to marry within the clan, it was important, and so that's like that's I don't. You're not supposed to marry a good person. You're just supposed to marry somebody in the clan. What if that somebody in the clan was just a terrible person? You know what I'm saying? Those things. They bother
Yeah.
bothers me.
Yeah,
And
but
this may be very juvenile, I have a very juvenile, undeveloped
no,
understanding.
that's okay. That's okay, right? Because it's a different culture. And it is hard for us to understand, right? Because it's way different than us, right? The idea with this culture is that like it's just not this clan that is doing this. and a lot of reasons for this, right? Which we see in Israel's history later on, in any clan, right? The idea is always inheritance.
Mm. And it's
And s-
survival of the,
Yeah, like the clan is your survival, right? The tribe is your survival. And you don't want to go off for practicality and marry outside of your tribe, because if you do, and the inheritance of the lands get split up, there's huge problems, right? Your tribe becomes vulnerable.
Mhm.
So we see this, after Jacob has his 12 tribes, like even then, they don't break off and intermarry. And if there are rare instances of intermarriage, it happens that the woman always has to go to the husband's tribe, because that's the way inheritance worked. Like the husband couldn't come into the wife's tribe, because when the patriarch died, like you couldn't bring land into another tribe, right? So it is a very different view of marriage.
Yeah,
Um,
I think I
that
took
and
you down a path we didn't, we don't need
Oh, that's
to.
okay, Lydia. But I mean, the really reassuring thing in Genesis, right? There's a couple reassuring things in this, right? Is the fact that even though Rebecca and Isaac's marriage is arranged, like that's actually a love story. They actually loved each other. And that is the first time in Genesis we see a couple that it's expressed that they loved each other. And they did. And we will see that also with Jacob and Rachel. Right? Jacob truly loves Rachel. He gets stuck with Leah just because of cultural norms, right? But he truly does love her. I mean, there is such a thing as love in this culture. Um, but yeah, you did have to stay within your clan. And again, that's for survival. And again, that's the really discomfort of us looking, this story probably took place about 2000 BCE. We're looking back at it like 4,500 years. It doesn't, but there's still tribes that exist in the desert today that live by these rules that seem perfectly normal. The original audience to this would have thought this was normal. Although love does exist. Anybody else? Anything pressing?
Was that a purr I heard?
Oh, it's so
my God.
beautiful.
This is totally, I did not expect this, so sorry.
That's
Or I actually
wonderful,
enjoyed.
Nancy.
Oh, good
Yeah.
for, good
Do
for
they have
you.
names?
Nothing.
Oh,
When the kids show up tomorrow, they'll be named.
they'll be naming them tomorrow.
Yeah.
So
I'm sure you're not into like Isaac and Rebecca and Jacob and Esau, Flora.
It's sort of like, do I really want to put that on them? You know, defiant children and parents that just, don't understand parenting. No.
That's very true, right? That's a very Hebrew thing to say. Um, so questions, comments where we are.
The only thing that bothered me about this
Yeah,
is that he has this dream.
hmm
He's obviously moved by it because he puts this stone down and he says that it's where God exists, and
hmm
and then he makes this statement. Well, if God does this for me and he does this for me and he does
hmm
this and this,
hmm
this, this, this,
hmm
then I'll say, okay, he's God.
hmm Yeah. I mean, he's
So
not
he
there, right?
reverts right back to Jacob. I mean,
hmm Yeah, it's not mature faith, right? He does. He is the only person that puts conditions on God after a promise. And again, we see vows, right? We see vows of like, I'll do this for God if, right? We see other scenarios, like in Numbers and Judges, there Hannah, has an if then to God, like if you give me a child, right? She was barren. She prays, if you give me a child, then I will designate him as a Nazarite, right? There are if then statements in the Bible, in the Old Testament. But like they never come after a promise.
Right.
Right. Yeah, he doesn't have mature faith. Right. But one of the big purposes in this story is that we see a transformation of a person through the Jacob narrative, right? We see this very scheming man who puts conditions on a God who just promised him, the world, who said, look, you have absolutely nothing to worry about. I am going to protect you. I am here. I will provide for you. You have my presence always. And Jacob says, well, if you give me some clothes and if you give me the food and all these bare necessities of life, then, you can be my God and I'll give you a tithe. Yeah. I mean, there are no excuses for him. He's very fallible and he's very human. But if you've read the full Jacob narrative, right, we see a full turnaround of somebody's faith journey, right? And that is the beauty of the Jacob narrative, is that we can all find ourselves in some of this narrative and see that God's grace always allows us to repent and to come home, and that God doesn't hold it against us, that God is present with us even when we're not very present with God. God doesn't give up the ship, even though we do. And we see this in Jacob's narrative. And we see, like, in his complete narrative, like this full transformation of somebody we'd never expect. And it is ultimately all because of the presence of God in his life. Right? This is why God renames Jacob at the end of his, journey, when he wrestles with whoever he wrestles with at the Jabbok. Remember, names are given to signify spiritual moments in a purpose life, like a turnaround in a purpose life, in a person's life. And he renames in Israel, right? He's a new person. And it's huge. Jacob becomes, substantial in the story of God's salvation. Somebody we'd never expect this from. And interestingly enough, if you've also read ahead in Jacob's story, every time Jacob is in like this, like, I don't know, like this pivotal moment, God comes back and reiterates that promise of presence with Jacob. God is very bonded to Jacob. Even when Jacob's not bonded to him. And that's a very hopeful thing for us. Questions, comments about that? Right, and notice in 18, right, Jacob takes this stone that was his pillow. It was horizontal, and now he has made it vertical, right? He sets it up as a pillar. And he pours oil on it. Oil would have been significant in his time, right? It was a form of survival. You cooked with it, you ate it, you needed it for survival. And this is a fugitive on the run, and he wastes oil, he uses oil to consecrate this stone for God, right? He consecrates it, he sets it aside, and he calls that place Bethel. Bethel means house of God, right? Bet means house in Hebrew, El is God, it's house of God. And then Jacob makes his vow, if God, then all. And he goes back to being Jacob. No, I set this pillar up. So a couple things here about the gate of heaven. Where did I say gate of heaven?
Before that, isn't it?
I did too, John. Here it is. All right. This is the gate of heaven. Yeah, here it is. It's up here in 17. So there's many reasons what that means, right? What gate of heaven means. So in ancient Near East, right? What did gates mean? Right? We've talked about this a lot.
It's where the power was.
Yeah, power gathered there, right? The big decisions were made, legal, political, commercial. And so, it has a significant meaning in the ancient Near East. It's where decisions were made. And so by calling this the gate of heaven, right? It is saying that this is a portal. This is a portal where God can make commands, right? Where he communicates his decrees. The other thing is like the intersection of heaven and earth, right? Up to this point, it's kind of presumed that, yeah, okay, God was with Jacob's family back in Beersheba. But now we see that God can be anywhere, that God moves, right? He's not confined to one place. We see, as like Barbara said, this is a place of access. God is accessible. You can experience the presence of God. It can actually happen, right? Because God is accessible. It's a precursor to the temple. When he names this Bethel, right? House of God. So we know that in Israel's history, right, there's two places that were considered the dwelling place of God, right? The first was, do you know?
Jerusalem?
So that becomes when the temple's built,
The tabernacle.
the tabernacle, right?
Okay.
So, yeah, so when after the Exodus and Israel is wandering through the wilderness, right? God's presence is thought to be in the tabernacle, right? The house of God. And then later, when Solomon is builds a house for God on earth, it's the temple, right? This pillar, this in Bethel, right, is considered to be the precursor to ultimately the temple, tabernacle, the temple, place where God will dwell with his people. But interestingly enough, right, it's ultimately, and although I never try to do this, it is ultimately fulfilled in Christ. This dream has a manifestation in Christ, points to Christ. In what way? Does anybody know? Okay, so Jesus says, and I'm just going to read this quote so I get it right. In John 1:51, Jesus references Jacob's dream, and he tells his disciples, most assuredly, I say to you, hereafter you shall see heaven open and the angels of God ascending and descending upon the Son of Man. Right. No longer on this ladder, right, ramp, but now Jesus becomes the access to God. Very much like in Jacob's dream, right? Jesus fulfills that dream. And Jesus becomes the portal, the bridge to God from humans, right? Jesus Christ is the access to God. Questions, comments about that?
What's the John reference again?
151. So he says, most assuredly, I say to you, hereafter you shall see heaven open and the angels of God ascending and descending upon the Son of Man. That doesn't seem like the right number. Let me just double check that.
No, it is.
Is it?
Yep, I'm looking at it right.
Yeah. I mean, that's a direct
Jesus-
reference.
Jesus says it even more directly. No man comes to the Father but by me.
But meaning here, Suzanne, he's directly relating it back to Jacob
Yeah.
and the dream. And he talks about the ascending and descending and replaces himself, replaces the latter with himself. Questions, comments? So yes, and so despite all this, right, Jacob still makes this very conditional. Jacob isn't there. He's not there. It looks pretty good, right? There's scholars who actually give him the benefit of the doubt and say, yes, this is actually budding faith in Jacob. He's showing evidence, but that's not really the tenor of this passage, right? That's not really what it's looking like.
He's
It
buying,
still what's that, John?
he's buying it. I mean, he's maybe a 10th.
He's doing wait and see, right? He's playing a wait and see game with God. Like if God keeps his promises, then I'll keep mine, right? You need to meet every one of my needs, right? Oh, and sometimes it sounds very familiar. We do that too. We bargain with God. This is a very human story. Anything else about this story you need to say? Right? He doesn't learn from Abraham, right? Every time Abraham is given a promise to God, no matter how disobedient he's been, right? He builds altars, he worships, he returns to God. Like Jacob gives a counter offer. Not there, right? He's not there, but God is. And that is the moral of this story. Questions, comments before we close for September? What can you take away from this? There's things that we can take away.
Don't bargain with God.
At some point.
Don't try to buy God's whatever affection.
Why, John? Why?
Well, I mean, the whole notion, I think, and that's what I was going to say, the biggest thing for me, it's the
Yeah.
whole enforcement of unconditionality.
Mm-hmm.
It's difficult,
Mhm.
at least I find it difficult to accept because it's such an other than human
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
response to a relationship.
We don't do grace well.
No, and so it's a discussion for another time is
Mhm.
I would think you do have to be careful though that, okay, but that doesn't just give you license to do whatever you want. Well, God unconditionally loves you and therefore no consequence to sin.
Oh, exactly, John, right? But there are consequences, right? These people aren't let off the hook, right? Isaac's whole thing about wanting to see Esau succeed doesn't happen, right? Had to be tremendously disappointing, to be tremendously upsetting, tremendously. He went against God there, and we know that Isaac, right, it was a very prayerful person. There had to be tremendous guilt that came with that, right? There are consequences to Isaac's behavior. Rebecca never sees her son again. He's gone 20 years. She's dead by the time he comes back. Isaac isn't. Isaac is dying, right? But he's dead. But she's dead. She never sees him again. Esau has this like anti-blessing, right? He does go to a territory that doesn't support life well. That's not, lush and fertile, right? He has a hard life. He disappoints his parents inevitably, right? Jacob lives a life of trial and tribulation. His whole life is struggle. Yeah, because of his own doing, right? But the point is there are consequences. There are consequences to all four of their behaviors. They don't get off scot-free. Jacob struggles, right? Isaac lives a life of just kind of submission, right? Abraham lives a life of obedience, right? But Jacob's life is defined by tribulation and suffering as a consequence of all of his very poor choices in life. And the same with us, right? We don't even have to talk about, God being like this judge in the sky that's out to get us, right? When we make poor choices, there are consequences. There's consequences to sin. There's consequences to us. There's consequences to the people around us. There's consequences to creation. Like all poor choices have consequences. And we might not see them immediately. And we might not experience them. And we might think that we get away scot-free, probably like Jacob thought the next morning. Right? But there are always consequences to our bad behavior. Anybody push back on that? Right? God doesn't give us a license to say, just go out and do what you're going to do. Right? Because again, there's consequences when we make bad choices. I mean, but I think some practical takeaways from this, right, is that it's very reassuring to know that God meets us in ordinary places and times, right? We can be in these very wilderness, vulnerable moments in our own lives, but God's presence is still there. Our past failures don't make God give up on us, right? Because God's promises are anchored in God's character, not ours, fortunately. It's about who God is, not who we are. The presence
And I
of
think
God is.
sometimes even when, sorry,
Mhm. Go ahead, go
even
for it,
when we've
Suzanne.
made bad choices and we're
Mhm.
suffering the consequences,
Mhm.
there's still blessings come out of it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, absolutely. I mean, yeah. In what way do you see that, Suzanne?
Just in things of my own life when I've
Mm-hmm.
done things that I really know are outside God's will, and yet there is
Mm-hmm.
still a blessing to be found. Yes, there's consequences,
Yeah,
but there are blessings that come from it.
yeah, that's very true. That's very true, right? That's true in all our lives. It's true in Jacob's life too, right? These times of trial and tribulation form him into
And
the
I think
person.
that's the grace.
Mm-hmm.
We don't just suffer the consequences and that's it. God washes his hands of us.
Exactly.
He still will give us blessings.
Yeah, yeah, which is like the ultimate definition of grace, right?
Yeah, we don't get what we deserve.
Mm-mm, mm-mm. And it's not right, yeah, exactly. And it's not because of anything we've done, right? We don't earn that grace. It's unmerited.
And I think that's some of the problem that we have today is that we live in a culture that teaches that you have to work hard and earn
Mm-hmm.
what you get.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And God doesn't
exactly.
work that way.
Yeah, exactly. And that's an interesting point, right, Suzanne? Because in this story of Jacob, right, he doesn't know how to be a receiver, right? He knows how to try to take control of his own life. He doesn't let go of like he doesn't give control over easily, and he doesn't know how to receive because when God tries to give to him, right, it has to be like he conditions it. So he has to learn how to be a receiver of grace, and I think that we do too. I think it's very hard. Again, like you said, we live in a culture where we think that, you know, we control what we have, right? and it's very hard for us sometimes to accept that grace. It doesn't come easily to us. Some of us are not good receivers. Some of us don't know how to receive. And that's a lesson too. And I talked yesterday at the 8 o'clock service, and we always talk through the sermons. And, I talked to them about my time with street ministry, right? And why some people who are on the streets, right, have very hard lives or addicted or have have just had very difficult times, right? Why they had such a hard time coming into church. Remember, I had a Vietnam vet who had done something in his life in the military that he never really wanted to confess to me. And I have a feeling that, it involved a homicide of some sort, because he has spent many, many, many years in Attica, and really felt that he had been too dirtied up for God. Like, he totally believed in God, and he totally believed in God's presence in the world and in history. He believed in all of those things. He didn't believe in the presence of God in his life because he felt that he was just too dirty for that, and that God would not have anything to do with somebody who was as tarnished as him. So he couldn't accept God's grace. He couldn't accept God's forgiveness. And so so many years, him and I had become very bonded, and he really wanted to come to church, but he would come to church, and then, like, after 5 minutes, he'd have to escape, and it got longer and longer. He never made it through a whole service. But that's a really good example of somebody who doesn't know how to accept, because they just feel like they're not worthy enough of that. And part of working with him was allowing him to know that a relationship with God is give and take, right? It's being able to take what God wants to give. And if we can, right, it doesn't make our relationship with God whole. I don't think he ever, the last I heard from him was my years when I was working as a chaplain at Fellowship, and he would call me once in a while. I haven't heard from him since, for 5 years, and I hope that he found that peace. But it was really a struggle for him because, like Jacob, he didn't know how to receive. Anything else that we need to say before we break for the next couple months?
Thank you for all of your time with us, and
Yes.
all the information that we would never have gotten on our own, or the understanding.
Well, thank you,
It's-
Lydia.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is just not out there,
Thank you,
So thank
Lydia.
you.
Right. Yeah. And thank you for for being like Jacob and wrestling, right? Yeah, and that's true.
Told me this
That-
before, and I'm still
What's that,
wrestling.
Lydia? What's that?
Said you've told me this before about the wrestling part, and I'm still wrestling.
That's okay, right? And I think and true, and honestly, like, Jacob is my favorite character in the entire Bible. And because I think he speaks so much to us, right? I've been a wrestler all my life with God, and still do. And I think, and this story validates that, right?
Yeah.
That's how Jacob gets the blessing. Because no matter how much Genesis has made us struggle, has made us fight, right? Fight our faith, or fight, no matter whatever Genesis has made us feel, apparently we have all been tenacious enough to hold on to God for that blessing.
Interesting. Yeah.
Right. the
Okay.
fact that we are all here still together and
come-
still debating this text and still questioning this text. It's very much like Jacob because we haven't let go of God. And, like Suzanne said, there's a blessing. And like Jacob says, there's a Jacob shows us, right? There's a blessing at the end. So keep wrestling. There's blessing at the end. And, don't let go of God because God's not letting go of us. And God is big enough to take our wrestling and our questions and our doubts. Because just like Jacob, God has promised unconditional presence with us also. And now you know where to find that gate to heaven. So you can go there anytime. It's always open. I'd say if you have any questions or comments before September, but I'll see you all. I'll see you. I
Definitely.
will certainly be seeing you all. I won't see you here on Monday nights until after the holiday, but you know where to find me. And if you read ahead and you're like, well, I'm really perplexed or confused, write me and I will be happy
It's too much.
to answer those questions the best I can.
Do something for Tammy on Monday nights.
Oh, you know what I'll do? I'll probably just do scripture study.
That's what it
My-
means to Tammy.
My friend will always say to me, like, well, what are you gonna do? Like after we get off the phone, like and I'm like, I'm just gonna do Bible stuff. It's like it's
It's so
my
funny.
whole life.
Well, we're grateful for that.
Mhm.
It's true.
But have a wonderful, rest of tomorrow because it's still gonna be cool, although I have to have my air on tonight. It's still hot in my house. But enjoy, this break from this horrible heat wave and
I know. Yeah. This is a joy.
yeah, it was really great today. And
Okay.
so have a great night and I will see you all
Thank
soon.
you. You too. All right.
Keep
Good
reading.
night, all.
Okay.
Mhm.
See
Good
you all
night.
in
All right.
September.
Bye.
Have a good night.
Mhm. Good
Everybody.
night.